What's up, family? Welcome to episode 7 of the Chip Off the Old Block podcast. I'm your host, CJ Matthews, here with
Dr. CJ Matthews. Happy to be here today.
How you feeling today, Dad?
Doing pretty good today. Pretty good. A little bit challenged in my spirit and in my heart and in my mind about what's going on in the country right now, and portions of the country, and just processing it and both taking it before the Lord and looking to see how do we interpret it based on my perception. How do I interpret it to our audience?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot going on, and it definitely have you feeling some kind of way. Just being a black man in America, it's just things always seem to, take a toll.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's interesting as you listen to the RNC, listen to the Democratic National Convention last week, and then watch the myriad of things that are playing out on the streets of our communities. Once again, African-American males, as they always have been in this country, have never been valued and or seen as human, worthwhile, or value, which is why they try to constantly affirm stereotypes on us and assimilate them to the majority while they don't do the same. And you can see that in the instance last night in Kenosha, where the young man carrying the rifle walked right past police, up to police, no problem. The militia got water, but those people who were protesting, who were seen as anarchists, mob, violent, were treated totally different. So it was on visible display last night, unfortunately, in such a tragic situation where two people would lose their lives and one person would be wounded, and then the perpetrator ultimately could walk right down the street and get away simply because law enforcement saw him as they see themselves.
Yeah, and the truth is, in the words of Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, this is America. And first of all, I want to just send out prayers to Jacob Blake. That's just a crazy situation and unnecessary.
Unfortunately, for Brother Blake, and yes, we are praying for his life. And as I always pray for myself, that even though the medical reports are not healthy right now, that God will sustain him, and then through medical interventions and power of God, he would at some point in his life have mobility again.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately for him, whatever was going on in his heart and his mind at the time, especially with his 3 children in the car, and if what I understand is true, he came to intervene in something, and now I'm being arrested, and my 3 children are in my vehicle. I've already let you know I have a knife. So that's the last thing I'm doing is going for the knife. I'm really going for my 3 children.
Yeah. And it's just like to see the juxtaposition of that, and then everything that happened as a result of the protest, to see them side by side is just like, it's in your face. Like you said, it's on visible display. And actually it brings me to something that we haven't actually talked about. So I guess the first time we'll talk about this is on camera, on air. But there is this movement or this sort of a thing that's going around, and it's very controversial because the language of it is a bit aggressive, but the actual meaning of it and how people are taking it are two different things. And we know that police reform is something that is essential in our country. But what I'm specifically talking about is this move to, quote unquote, defund the police.
Right. Yeah. When I first heard that, I thought, my immediate thought, just based on my own political understanding and working between the political system, religious system, and law enforcement over the last 30 years, was no. You have an awakening going on now, and people are starting to visibly engage and seriously engage in the dialogue of change. And that rhetoric there will frighten some people away. That was my immediate reaction. And then as I had to go back and just look historically at our position in this country, and I have a program I'm launching with law enforcement right now, Fugitive Safe Surrender Through a Hotline. Our first person is going through it right now, which I've done it over the years. But then I begin to say, wait a minute. If the way you want to police us is the only way you can police us and still be police, then we don't need you.
I think there's a couple of different takes on what it means to defund the police. And a lot of people's first reaction is no, because they think that you're saying abolish the police.
No.
And that's not what it's saying. But from my understanding, really what this call to defund the police is, it's really a call to redirect those resources that militarize the police, that call for all of this, what many would deem unnecessary armament and other things, and direct those resources to some of the more or other things that we believe could more so benefit the community.
I think that whenever you make a statement, especially today, given the viability of social media, everybody's going to interpret it based on how they choose to see it.
At some point, well, maybe not. I guess that's just proven as and not to go in circles, but as I look at the RNC, it sort of just shows that. And as I've been on social media this past week, it's just like, I guess if some people, they take a stance regardless of whatever, and that's just it. But the truth is, I mean, you know, I don't know. I can't say that I disagree with the idea. I mean, obviously, it's something that has to be developed, refined, and but the idea that the way, like you said, the way that we're being policed is just, it's unacceptable.
Don Lemon was talking last night. I think it was Rick Santorum, if I'm saying his name right, former governor or senator, whatever he was. Forgive me for not remembering that, but his immediate reaction to police killing us was, you kill yourselves more. And unfortunately, I believe he's an intelligent man, and he didn't see the difference in the two. One, a criminal comes into anyone's community and shoots someone. But then when the police does it, they're not charged criminally, number one, most of the time. Even if they are, it doesn't matter. Number two, my expectation would be protect and serve. I don't want every time I get pulled over to know that the potential of this being my last day on earth is real. I didn't, as I normally do, I bought our sticker and put it in the glove compartment. And both Dee Dee and your mother have been the recipients of that behavior. But anyway, so police pulled up behind me the other day, and I'm like, oops, the sticker's in the glove compartment. So I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't need to be pulled over. Number one, I'm not in no 10 and 2 mood right now. I'm not in no yes sir mood right now. And how many brothers feel that way when they're being harassed unnecessarily?
Right.
In my case, it would have been an okay pullover because I don't even remember if the sticker was gone that day or the next day. But why do I have to feel that way?
Yeah.
It's that kind of a stress is a stress that Santorium never has to worry about for his children. I remember sharing with a colleague of mine who's Caucasian, and he just wanted to have a conversation about being black in America. And when I told him that my biggest fear was my grandsons riding down the street getting pulled over and killed by police was my biggest fear. He couldn't fathom that. He couldn't fathom that. All right, and none of you are criminals or criminal behavior and those kind of things. So that's a discussion that we could have for. We could stay on this podcast until the next 40 or 50 years, unless the current movement brings about the change we desire. And it's not about any more conversation. Because when I listen to the president and the vice president say, law and order, I speak white English.
What's the translation?
The translation means, police, do what you need to do to protect our property. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Blake was in his own property. He wasn't threatening no one's property. And there, prayerfully, as a peacemaker, and now potentially his life is ultimately changed forever. God pray he lives, and if the doctors are correct, without some miraculous intervention, he's paralyzed the rest of his life. But after Mr. Floyd's death, we thought for a moment there's a glimmer. And then your president and your vice president began to say, and your attorney general, law and order. We're going to protect your property. That's always been the rhetoric of this country from the beginning. It has been about property. It has been about white domination. It has been about white supremacy.
Yeah. It's almost unthinkable. And so the conversation becomes by people who are of other mindset that this sort of a thing happens because of a failure to comply.
Right.
And it's almost just like the police chief saying that those people wouldn't have got killed out there if they would have obeyed the curfew.
Right. Right. Or to condemn the Democratic leadership for calling them white supremacists versus calling them militia. I remember sitting, and it was a tragic situation because an officer had been killed in a community near us here in Cleveland. And we were sitting with a group of Caucasian officers, myself along with another one of my colleagues, and we were just talking in general because we were going to have his service at my colleague's church. And, it came up about everything we're talking about to some degree. And so, they said, well, how do you see us? And we just told them, look at your haircut. And they said, what do you mean? I said, what's the difference between you and a skinhead? I said, y'all's haircuts look exactly the same. Now, maybe that's just military or, we were sitting there and we were not in a angry or conflicting situation, we were having an honest dialogue.
Right.
You know, but you know, we see certain things, and so we stereotypical. We put them in stereotypical places, just like they do us, because that behavior we've seen, those people we've seen, and those people aren't there to protect property. Those people are there to shoot somebody black or brown and get away with it. That's why they're there. They can't protect the property, because once that thing is released from somebody's hand, that property is going down.
Yeah. It's just it's I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, you had adult leadership, and you had young adult. And as a result of him being there, now 2 people are dead. And had any of those people in those what look like tanks, I don't know what they call them today, in those military vehicles in the midst of the community, had have paid attention for 1 second, he would have been apprehended sooner, and maybe those other 2 people wouldn't have been shot. Things could have been different. But because he looked like them, he got a pass. Mr. Blake looked like us, and he got 7 bullets in the back.
Yeah.
Mr. Floyd looked like us. He got a knee on the neck until he cried out for his mother. And the officer continued because he knew it was only a matter of time before death came, because he had already accosted him in a club where they both worked. And nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the murderers of Breonna Taylor are still at large.
Well, they're investigating it. They're investigating it. You know, it's and we have family members who are police officers. You know, it's why as a community do we have to be put in this position? Why? Because protect and serve, equal rights of the law. It's not under the law, it's of the law. All right? Equal rights of the law. That's all we ever ask for. Equal protection.
Yeah.
You know, it's just amazing. Then when I listened to a lot of both of the conventions, and I heard those things, and I listened to the rhetoric, and I'm not as much on social media as you guys are, and I guess every week I'm committing to get more engaged in those things so I can hear and see what people are saying. But just haven't had the privilege of being engaged for the past 35, 40 years, which makes me old to some people, and that's why I'm the old block. But it also gives me a perspective, because I kept hearing the RNC people refer to the party of Lincoln as if we are still our great-grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
As if we are still our great-grandparents, who fortunately, praise God, because of the Emancipation Proclamation, were set free. And your great-grandparents were involved in slavery. Okay? All right? My grandfather, all right, had to leave the South. Okay? All right? So to hear that and know the truth, all right, Lincoln died. Lincoln was killed because of the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
All right. And then the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that the civil rights leader quoted from, I forget his organization, the other night. Yeah, right. Those amendments came, and then what happened? All right. All right. Because we saw black mobility for a moment, all right? And we saw the opportunity to take charge of our destiny. And what happened? As soon as we did, Reconstruction, okay? Jim Crow South, okay? All right, you had the Jim Crow South, and you had a inept North. All right, and we give so much credit to Democrats and Republicans. We forget neither one of those parties wanted us until they needed us for votes. And that's how it's been for over 100 years. It's not about giving us anything. Nobody's going to give us anything. All right? But we left the Republican Party for the same reasons why we don't need to engage them today. We left, why? Because when Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act and Barry Goldwater was the nominee, the South rejected the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement. And blacks in droves moved over to the Democratic Party. At the same time, and this is prior to Goldwater and Johnson, Eisenhower moves in. And this conservative philosophy takes root. And it matures with Reagan. And then we move through an era of Bushes and Clintons and back and forth, the loyalty of the black community to the Democratic Party, not understanding that no party is ever going to free us. But there has been moments in history when something happened. And now you have a whole new Republican Party. I don't know if it's a whole new conservative movement, and it is not the Lincoln movement, it is the Trump movement.
Yeah.
They totally dissolved their platform to say, we don't have a platform, we'll follow the president.
Right.
We're on the brink of totalitarianism.
Yeah. And the rhetoric is crazy. It's the same old, it's literally, they say it, what? Protecting the American way. Keep America, America.
Right. What I watched Ozzie It, Inherit It, and Leave It to Beaver. That's the America that they want. And again, I'm not saying that one party is less culpable than the other, but the current regime, when you can stand and just say the rhetoric that was stated this week with everything negative that's going on in this country, and you acknowledge it in fleeting ways, or stand up and say the name Jesus and not understand Luke 4, to me that's worse than a person who is ignorant and doesn't understand, because these people know what they're doing. You know, I went back and looked at Jim Jones and Guy Annisberg and those 918 people that lost their life, and the misperception of the saying, drink the Kool-Aid, because everybody thinks that these people just drank the Kool-Aid. They didn't drink no doggone Kool-Aid. They drank the doggone Kool-Aid because they had been practicing drinking it, and because on the day when he decided that it was necessary to go forward because he was going to be discovered, he had guns and bows and arrows aimed at those people and killed the babies first. Why? Because the first group he brought up there was the group that he knew were going to cause him problems. He said, no, if I kill the babies first, then they won't have nothing to live for. They won't have any hope. So these people drank the Kool-Aid, yes. And that's what RNC wants us to do this week, is drink the Kool-Aid. but not in that old traditional statement that people make about it. No, 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 no. They're standing around with their guns. They're standing around with their bow and arrows. The bow and arrows are those who stand up and want to make us believe that racism doesn't exist in America. Come on, y'all. Y'all are not that blind. Want to stand up and make us believe because you're a personal friend with the president, he may or may not be a racist. Who want to stand up and make us believe that you can grow up to be a senator in South Carolina, and South Carolina is not one of the more racist states in this nation. Given who their senators have been, given what the policies and the that they have supported and that they have killed. And yes, for the vice president to stand up and boast about 200 federal conservative judges and 2 Supreme Court justices, they know what they're doing. And they're standing around right now with the guns aimed at us saying either you're going to drink the Kool-Aid or we're going to kill you. Law and order.
Yeah. And as I was listening, I was reminded of America back in the day. Western expansion and this idea of manifest destiny. And the thought or the belief that we are divine, we are doing God's work. We have the right to basically do whatever we want to do, basically as an excuse to rape and pillage. And, you know, one thing that a lot of people one reason why, from my perspective, one reason why a lot of people are turned off from Christianity is because of the fact that it has been weaponized against us.
Always. And
as I look up, over the past week, most recently, it's still being weaponized today.
Yes, it is.
And I don't know, it's just almost mind-boggling how we willing to do all of this thing in the name of God, in the name of the Lord, in the name of Jesus, or because I have a cross on. And then to go and say that Joe Biden is a Catholic by name only. What is that? What? And I'm like, man, this I don't know.
You see, racism couldn't exist without American Christianity. I didn't say Christianity. And that's where African Americans have to understand the distinction between American Christianity and kingdom Christianity, or Christianity of the Bible. Because American Christianity has only and always served one purpose, and that is to keep America in the place of power, to keep black folks subjugated, and to make sure that the church would align itself in ways that never would allow America to be threatened. American Christianity says, we'll save your soul, but we won't educate you, we won't love you. See, you got to know the competing philosophies, big government versus small government. The conservative philosophy that has matured and grown up in the last 50 years in the Republican Party, and now the Donald Trump conservative or Republican movement, whichever one it is, I don't know. But given the evangelicals' church support of him, I would say he's now the head of the not just Republican Party, but he's the head of the conservative movement also. All right. So I don't have anything against him. All right. He's the president. He was elected. But the philosophy is crushing to us. And because African American Christians often are confused because of wedge issues and don't understand the full scope of what's going on and haven't been introduced to true kingdom theology that would never allow us to look past the pain of people, that would never allow us to stand up and declare God's power and then not fight for God's power to take down racism in this country. There's supposed to be one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice, except for black people or babies at the border.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of that's exactly where I was kind of at with it, because there's a lot of talk about the American dream. And what is the American dream? Like, really, like what is the American dream? Because obviously we reached a place where there is upward mobility, where, I can, amass a certain amount of wealth, but at the same time, no matter how much wealth I gain or whatever, I'm still, Kanye got a line in a song from his first album, and he says, even if you in the Benz, you still in the coupe.
Well, you can, ask Professor Gates that. I mean, recently, in the last few weeks, I guess few months, a professor in California. See, when people are blind to racism, and they're criticizing Joe Biden for saying the police have presumptive prejudice, and I'm like, he said it's soft, okay, and that's why when I was thinking about the podcast for today, and then I looked at the videos last night, I'm like, man, I don't even have to say nothing, just run that video with our video,
right?
And for people not to want to acknowledge that, all right, that's what makes their Christianity disingenuous. Maybe they can just have a sin of omission and do nothing, but at least acknowledge the visible thing you see. And that's what was happening for a moment after the George Floyd murder, is that people were acknowledging what they saw. And that's why when people say there hasn't been any change, change comes when people of conscience are confronted with a thing that is so so bad that they have to do something. That's what was happening for a moment.
Yeah. And
now that's lost in what I call the revolution.
What you mean?
Well, revolutions sometimes have violence.
Right.
Okay. We didn't take this country with a peaceful protest. We did not take this country from England after we took it from Americans, if that's what they want to be called, Native Americans, indigenous people. Yeah, we didn't take it with no sit-ins.
Well, I don't know if I came up with this or if I heard it somewhere, but the currency of revolution is blood.
Always has been, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's the part that a lot of people don't want to admit.
See, the moment that we have these kinds of discussions, then people have a way of dismissing you. Radical. All right? Dismissing you. And so we are so easy to be dismissive.
Right.
And there's some things that are the currency of freedom that we cannot afford to spend on foolishness. I can't dismiss why the NBA players didn't play last night. The currency of freedom wouldn't allow me to do that. Because the people who believe there's been no change, for that to happen last night, I guarantee you, I was born in a time where that would have never happened. But now I'm living in a time when it did happen. Hallelujah.
Right.
All right. And so the currency of freedom is something that is so valuable that every moment freedom is moving forward. We have to seize that moment, and we're there now. It's not about electing a Joe Biden or a doggone Democrat. It's not about what they have or haven't done for us. It's about this moment. We want change in how we're treated by police. We want change in who invests in us economically. You see, Goldwater's issue was this. If we have mass intervention by the federal government and the states can't determine what they want to do, which the South didn't want to do nothing with black folk or for black folk, and the federal government now mandates this Civil Rights Act, and this civil rights movement now has legs to stand on, and we have a court now that's open to, for a very small period of time, freedom legislation, which now that's gone. All right? Yeah, this is a moment when we've got to move the thing forward, as we've seen in the past. We're going to move it forward this time if people don't faint. The revolutionaries are serving their purpose. Now, my challenge with that is, I've been a nonviolent, peaceful protester, a nonviolent philosophy all of my ministry. And I believe that people of goodwill can get caught up in the revolution's activity and forget what brought them here in the first place. That's my dilemma. I can't, like King said when he came here, all right? You want me to tell these young black rioters, no, forgive me, Lord, protesters, not to be violent in the streets when America solves all of their problems with violence.
Right.
They stood up and bragged last night about the people they've killed. That was only because Obama killed bin Laden. America solves this problem with violence, and we see that every day. When things are denied to communities of color and poor communities that could be freely given to them, that's violence. For the number of children to be hungry that's violence. For children not to be educated appropriately. And trust me, school choice is not the answer. Public schools is not the answer. The answer is schools. It shouldn't be either or. But in their philosophy, government doesn't have a responsibility. We leave that up to the states. We don't intervene. Why? Because we don't want big government. Well, let the banks get in trouble and see if they bail them out. Let Wall Street get in trouble and see if they bail them out. Yeah, big government when we want it. And then when it comes to compassion and the real virtue of Christianity that has not been exhibited in this country, love. And I listen to those supposed, well, Lord forgive me, and that's another dilemma. We're going to all be in heaven together. But I'm going anyway.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like you don't want to be associated with certain people. You don't want people to. You don't want certain people to represent you, and maybe that's a bad thing to say, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And I've and again, I can say what I say and do what I do because I don't owe nobody nothing but Christ and my family and my ministry and the world to some degree, but I have a track record. All right, and it says that I have worked with all of them. All right, with no pretension, all right? But at the same time, there are moments when you got to make a declaration, all right? And right now, our community should be about a few things. Number one, getting as many people prepared to vote as possible. Number two, getting as many of us to vote as possible. And then number three, stop looking at Democrats, stop looking at Republicans. And this time, the reason why you have to vote for a specific group is because the other group has gained control, gained too much power, and put it in the hands of somebody who knows how to take that power. And in the end, we will be back on plantations. Now, your millionaires and billionaire African Americans, I thank God for those who are pushing the move forward. But those who are standing in the way, you can't listen to them because they're protected not by their money. They're protected by the fact that they have been able to do some things that you have not been able to do. Learn some things that you have not been able to learn, and ultimately grow an economy that you haven't been able to grow. Right now, if you are not in a financially stable position, then you need to be voting, and you need to be voting on the group that's going to best represent your opportunity for that forward motion. And right now, it is not conservative.
Yeah.
It may be in the future. I'm not ruling anything out. This cycle, because again, you got to remember, neither one of them wanted us. They accepted us over time. Republicans inherited us because of Lincoln. Democrats, we flocked to them because of the Civil Rights Act, Voters' Rights Act, and those policies that were put in place. But our loyalty will never yield what we want it to. But this season, this cycle, we need to be in a place, something other than conservative. And then we need to evaluate the next 3 years while we work to get more of us prepared and more of us engaged. And I guarantee you, if we work the next 25 years the way the conservative movement or the liberal movement has worked, in concert and in tandem, I don't talk about no doggone unity mess. Nobody has to do that. White people don't have to meet to keep racism alive. But black people better keep meeting if they want some freedom.
Yeah. What's left to say after that?
Well, you know, it's a challenging moment. The beauty is we do live in a nation where everybody has the right to choose. But I believe this week and last week, we were put in a position to say, if you choose them, you're this. If you choose them, you're that. I don't think either one of them were right on that. But I do believe, unfortunately, this time, and that's why I say I like my track record, because I've been on both sides. I believe this time it's not in our best interest to go with the conservative movement, regardless of what you think are family values. Because, again, see, we lost a part of our ethos, and that is, if I'm all right, then I am my brother and sister's keeper.
Yeah.
And that's what you see emerging. I like what the sports people are doing. And I think Kenny the Jet walked off his show.
Yeah, he did.
I'm like, wow. You know, now people can dismiss those things. Why? Because you got a platform? No. different. That's rare. I've been watching sports shows since when I'm 67. I don't know, a long time. Probably ever since they've been coming on TV. All right, but for an African-American sportscaster with a major role in sports television to walk off a live show, there's something going on. And I said in the last podcast, and I went back to the store again this week, and the last time it was little kids with signs. This time it was high school kids with signs in this community talking about Black Lives Matter. And they've been out there every Saturday.
What neighborhood is that?
I ain't saying it on the podcast. You know where the neighborhood is. You graduated from the high school. You know, to deny an awakening, as small as it is, if we make no progress, we'll make no progress because we chose to be too angry. And I'm angry. You can hear it in my passion. We chose to be irrational in what can be done. We chose to be disengaged by not voting or not registering for the census. Those things right there have nothing to do with racism. All right? We don't value the currency of freedom. Freedom costs. It costs, and it costs, and it costs every generation. And we're at a moment for our generation, which is all of us. Don't dismiss us old folk, all right? It's all of us. We're still alive right now. So we are this generation. We are the 2020 generation. And so if we choose to let this moment pass, they've already shown you, we thought there was going to be a break after Mr. Floyd's murder. They've already shown you, based on the president, the vice president, and the attorney general's release, that nope, we'll kill you when we need to, we'll kill you when we want to, and ain't nothing you can do about it. And I don't buy into that crap, good police and bad police. Get the military the hell out of my community.
Defund the police.
Well, I don't know about that. See, I haven't worked all of that out in my mind. I do have a model.
We could get hung up on the language, but you could be saying the same thing with different words.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure we are. I'm sure we're not.
But to the point of the police, good cops, bad cops, based on what's legal, it's just an excuse for a certain type of a person to get off an agenda. And what's the kid's name? Kyle Rittenhouse. He was a police officer in training, so to speak. That's the type of person, that's the type of a people who have infiltrated that system in order to get off their agenda. Right. And it's not just in the police, it's in the courts. And it's gotten to the point that it's so sophisticated that it's just outrageous.
Right. And it was sophisticated up until now. It's blatant. It's blatant. We've always said that. And again, to those officers who don't fit this analogy, I don't apologize to you, but you don't fit the analogy. My grandmother taught me, if they're not talking about you, they're not talking about you. All right? So if you don't fit this analogy, then you don't fit it. All right? But we often said that they took off the white robes to put on the blue collar, blue stuff.
Yeah.
Been saying that all my life. All right? And that's why when Myles Garrett kicked that boy's butt last year, all right, we was there, remember?
Yeah.
And all the old black dudes said, ooh, he called him a such and such. We knew it automatically. That didn't come out for a few days for whatever reason, but we knew it when it happened. For him to go from 0 to 100 that quick, we knew what he called him. We had no doubt in our mind. And I heard all those paid athletes coming out defending what it was. And I'm like, man, come on. Every black person that played football between 19 whatever and 1980 something. No. And Donovan, I remember one time Donovan got mad at a game and got a personal foul because a boy, and that's 2010, 12, called him that name. Yeah, so come on, man. Let's not be blind to racism. Let's agree to disagree that y'all believe that there's no racism because y'all are the racists. The only way you believe there's no racism is because you are a racist. That's my definition of racism. People who don't believe there's no racism are racist.
Yeah, and then they get these black people to stand up and agree with them.
You got to remember, we've always been in a position to flow that way. You know, some people have always wanted to be white. There were blacks who wanted to be white. There were blacks who wanted to be near white people. There were blacks who wanted to be away from them. Then there are blacks and whites who work well together, live well together, and have no trouble with each other. So that's just the danger of America, is that we have the ability to stand and say things and actually believe it. I believe that those people that said the stuff, I don't believe they were throwing up after they said it.
No, that's the thing about it. Yeah. It ain't just rhetoric. Everything that they say, that's their real belief.
Well, remember this, competing philosophies, conservative, liberal, you mentioned the Black Manifesto. Was it Black Manifesto?
No, Manifest Destiny.
Oh, Manifest Destiny. Okay, well, we'll look at the Black Manifesto too. But there are going to be people who believe stuff. Because most of us inherited our early politics from our parents. Then we went to college. And then it was all these ideas floating around in college, and maybe you locked on to something different. And then you went out into the workplace. All these ideas floating around, and maybe you either affirm what you learned from your parents, you affirm what you learned in college and what you migrated toward, or you keep moving. And we grow. And I know that I read one article in one of the books I was reading, and they were interviewing blacks. And they interviewed this one guy, and it was years ago when they interviewed him, but it was the post-black Republican, because blacks were Republican and they had become Democrats. And so they asked this particular guy, they were like, well, what are you, a Democrat or Republican? He said, what do you mean? I'm a Democrat. And he says, why are you a Democrat? He said, because how could a black person be a Republican? Well, I know many black Republicans, okay, and not because their grandparents were Republican. They bought into that philosophy. They bought into, I know many pastors, they bought into those wedge issues, abortion and family, and they bought into those things, and for them, that's the righteous, right thing to do. But that's American Christianity. That is not Christianity of the Bible.
Yeah.
And if we can't distinguish, you can always distinguish American Christianity from true Christianity, because American Christianity is concerned about your soul only, and true Christianity is concerned about you.
Right. And that was the point that you mentioned that I was trying to get at, where it's just the fact that it's like, even if I am somewhere else, I can't just forget about everybody else. Right. It's like the concern about the least of these, Right. But
well, see, I was blessed, as you were. I mean, my dad and my mom, my grandparents, my grandfather worked. My grandmom was a nurse, My dad worked hard, a couple jobs. My mom was an educator, then moved into another career and worked for a great place. So I've been blessed, and I had the freedom to dream, the freedom to think, and then I became a pastor of Mount Sinai Church, and then inherited Friendship, Mount Sinai Friendship United, and I've always had the ability to have a dream or have a hope or have a vision, and then someone there to support it, whether it was my grandparents and parents as a child growing up and then going off to college and coming back home and not finishing college and getting married and having your sisters, and then ultimately eventually finishing college and then going on to graduate school, doctoral program. So I've had the privilege of a life in America. But because I've had that, I don't have to take the bull crap that people want to shove down our throat just because they think they gave that to me. They ain't gave me nothing. My parents did. My grandparents did. The potential of this nation did, but not because, because I got engaged with police so many times. Like, if police was killing us then like they were killing us now, you wouldn't be born. They just used to beat us up. They didn't kill us.
Well, they still do that too.
Yeah, but it's a difference than having to go home and heal and having to go to the cemetery.
No, for sure.
Well, guess we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Come back to next time. Hey, make sure you verify your registration for voting. Make sure you are verified. All right? Make sure you are verified. And they've extended the census, so make sure you fill out the census. Census2020.gov.